One of the most controversial prospects in the 2017 NFL Draft is Deshaun Watson. Some think he's the next franchise quarterback based on his clutch performances in the college playoffs last year. The former 5-star dual-threat quarterback from Gainesville, Georgia, had offers from many schools, including his home state Georgia Bulldogs, but eventually committed to Clemson. In my opinion, Watson's best fit is with the New York Giants, where he can patiently sit behind Eli Manning and learn from him at the tail end of his career. He can work with a quarterback coach with no pressure to compete for 2 full seasons while having an extremely talented wide receiver core with Odell Beckham Jr. and Sterling Shepard. Throughout his career with the Clemson Tigers, he demonstrated the leadership and intangible qualities that teams look for in a franchise quarterback. The issue with him is that he's extremely raw fundamentally, needing to work on his footwork and decision making in order to make in the pros. If he starts as a rookie and doesn't have an adjustment period, I think there's a much higher bust potential with him at the next level. So what grade would we give Watson? We are giving Watson a mid-second round grade, and here's why. As a quarterback, Watson displays very inconsistent accuracy at all levels of his throws. On crossing routes over the middle of the field, he consistently places passes behind his receiver. A lot of that has to do with his footwork, which we'll discuss more of that later in this video, but here's an example against Louisville in their 2016 match. After the play action, Mike Williams gains inside leverage, opening a wide open window over the end zone if he can lead his receiver. Unfortunately, Watson leans back into his throw, not putting enough arm to the pass, allowing the defender to undercut the ball for the pick. This is simply terrible. While many supporters will point to a 67% career completion average, I want to remind you that Clemson routinely recruits top-notch talent, and they pair it with a shotgun spread offense to create spacing against weaker zone coverage teams. A couple of examples of that can be seen in these 2 plays versus Florida State in their 2016 match, where they use screen passes to horizontally stretch the defense, and then use empty set shotgun looks to vertically stretch FSU's cover 6 defense, opening up a seam throw to the tight end over the middle of the field. On downfield throws, he consistently missed open receivers. This was most evident against Louisville when he played terribly like in this throw in the middle of the second quarter. His receiver has the closest defender beat by a solid 3 yards, and he underthrows the pass. The receiver ended up drawing a defensive pass interference call, but this should have been a walking touchdown instead if Watson placed the pass farther. Earlier in the same game, he overthrows Mike Williams by about 5 yards. Now, Williams is not the type of receiver that's going to gain much separation from his defender, but he had enough here where a well-thrown pass could have been a big gain. Now, this inaccuracy does not happen all the time. As a QB, Watson is just extremely inconsistent and goes through hot and cold streaks. For example, against Auburn in their 2016 match, Williams ran a fade route to the back corner of the end zone, and Watson's pass is absolutely perfect, but Williams can't secure the catch. A big cause of his inaccuracy and lulls in throwing power comes from his footwork. For example, against South Carolina at the end of the second quarter, Watson rushes throw to a wide open receiver, jumping forward, which caused him to miss a free touchdown. There is no reason to throw the ball like this, yet Watson routinely does this type of pass at least once or twice a game where he doesn't set his feet or throws flat-footed. Another example of poor footwork was in the 2016 National Championship versus Alabama. He has a clean pocket and then opens his hips through the throw without stepping into the pass. Now, the play ended up going for a touchdown, but that's not the point since the wide receiver was wide open. As I said before, this trait carried over to his throwing power. At the combine, his velocity was measured at 49 miles per hour. This is very, very low. Typically, franchise QBs throw in the mid-50s or greater. For example, both Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota threw 55 and 56 miles per hour respectively. Now, I think some of this can be fixed with better footwork and hip drive through his throws, so I'm not as worried as others are about this metric. Honestly, when he showed good footwork, fully stepping to his pass and driving with his hips, he looked good like in this throw for his Florida State game in the middle of third quarter. Another example in the same game was back in his own end zone where he zipped a beautiful pass to receiver in between the defender and trail technique and the safety coming across the field. In my opinion, he has the arm, but he needs consistent mechanics to get the most out of it. After arm talent, the next biggest issue I have with Watson is his decision making. He tends to stare down his receivers and misses defenders in space. For example, against Troy, Watson threw one of the worst interceptions I've seen from him all season. Williams is completely covered by 2 guys, and Watson still threw the pass anyways. It's possible Williams ran the wrong route, but he should have moved on to the next read regardless. Going back to the 2016 Florida State match, the defense baited him twice into poorly thrown interceptions. The mid-third quarter pick was just awful. The cornerback pretends like he's going to blitz, then drops underneath Mike Williams to intercept the pass. Post-snap, Watson needs to recognize that his pre-snap read could have been wrong, and he needs to adjust accordingly. In the fourth quarter of this match, Watson's slow processing of his reads got his receiver absolutely lit up instead of leading to a wide open touchdown. On the right side, Clemson is in trips where number 3 Scott cuts across the field and is wide open immediately due to busted coverage. Watson is slow to recognize, throws the pass behind his open receiver, which then gets Scott absolutely destroyed by the safety. He should have immediately recognized the bust, but was too slow to recognize. Versus Alabama in the national championship, Watson almost threw 2 interceptions to an underneath linebacker. He was extremely lucky this pass in the second quarter did not get returned for a touchdown, as Bama did the very same thing against Washington. Looking at Watson's total skill set, you have to mention his running ability. He is dynamic with the ball in his hands, and Clemson used him on keepers like in this play versus Louisville in the third quarter. He usually does a good job of sliding and generally avoiding direct head-on contact. As a QB that uses his athleticism to extend plays, he was inconsistent. At times he would drop his head and look to scramble instantly, where other times he uses elusiveness to set up throws outside the pocket like in this play versus Ohio State in the playoffs. To me, this definitely showed potential. One trait that I haven't discussed is his ability to throw with anticipation. He typically does a good job of throwing receivers open to create space like in this throw to Hunter Renfrow in the first quarter of the Florida State game. From a pro comparison standpoint, Tyrod Taylor from the Buffalo Bills fits in the best in my opinion. Both are roughly the same size, standing at just over 6 feet tall, with the athleticism and mobility to create plays. Both were team leaders and competitors in college and made clutch throws like this back-footed touchdown pass versus Auburn in the fourth quarter. Neither have ideal size, and both had a history of poor decision-making in college where they completely telegraphed their throws, making costly errors. Overall, if your team drafts Deshaun Watson, he needs an adjustment period to the pros and should not start for at least 1 to 2 full seasons. He has the potential and intangible qualities to be a franchise quarterback, but his extremely inconsistent fundamentals pushed him out of the first round in my opinion. Well, that's all I have for you. If you'd like this video and want to support the channel, feel free to follow the links to my PayPal and my Patreon accounts. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at SammyRGold.